Hey, what's up there, guys? Welcome back to another episode of RTFM Lab. In today's lab exercise, we'll be working with ChatGPT, Ansible, and VMware. I'll be walking you through my custom ChatGPT prompt that includes the sizing information and other specs needed for ChatGPT to create our Ansible playbook. I'm still amazed that with a few clever paragraphs of text that ChatGPT can provide a complete solution for you. Granted, it may take a few iterations or prompting, but for the most part, it'll get you close to the finish line. So are you ready to do some infrastructure as code with Artificial Intelligence Copilot? I am. Let's move into the lab and get things started. First thing we need to do is set up our Python virtual environment. So within this virtual environment, we will install Ansible and the VMware collection for Ansible using Ansible Galaxy and some other Ansible modules that we'll need in order to perform this project. All right, so I'm going to do Python 3. I think I'm going to use 3.8 because I think I got 3.6 on there as well. So I'm just do 3.8 minus M VENV for virtual environment. And I'm going to stick this in my home directory called Python 3 env. So this will actually stand up your Python 3 virtual environment. But in order to use it, you have to activate it. So we'll do a source tilde slash Python 3, which is the name of the directory that I told it to create for my environment, bin slash activate. All right, and as you can see, it says now you're currently in your virtual environment. So after doing a fresh install of your Python and virtual environment, for whatever reason, for me at least, it never seems like it creates a current version of pip. And so what I want to do now is do a pip install minus upgrade pip. And that's just so that, it's up to par for what I currently have on my repository. All right, so it updated to pip 23-3. All right, and so now what we'll do, we'll go ahead and install Ansible. So again, this is installing Ansible within our virtual environment, not at the system level. All right, and this will take a little bit, so we'll let it do its magic, and we'll get back to doing the next step here in a little bit. Okay, so came back and it says, there was an error checking the latest version of pip. I'm okay with that. Like I said, we already did the install. The latest I got right now is 23.2, I think it was. All right, so the next thing we want to do is go ahead and get the VMware collection, VMware Ansible collection installed. And we'll do that using Ansible Galaxy. So Ansible Galaxy collection install community VMware. And again, I will put all this down below so you guys can have access to the commands that I'm typing in. And we'll hit enter and let it do its do. And that is done. So we're running the community VMware version 3.10. And so the next thing we need to have in here in order for this project to work is we need to install the vmami, as I call it, and the request modules. We'll do a pip install vmomi and then request. All right, and again, we get the error again, a warning about pip. I'm not worried about it. All right, so we'll move on and go further into our project and see what we can do. Okay, what we need to do now is put together a prompt that ChatGPT will use in order to process our request, which is to build an Ansible playbook that will deploy a new VM onto our VMware environment. So like I said before, our prompt is kind of wordy, but it will give ChatGPT the best opportunity to give us what we need, and hopefully within one go around. So first, let me explain a little bit about this prompt and what it will be doing. With this part, we start off by giving ChatGPT our persona, or who we want him to be and what qualifications he should have. So as we can see here, we want them to be a DevOps engineer with 10 plus years of experience and has a primary focus of designing infrastructure as code environments using the Ansible scripting language in a Linux computer system. So now we go on to give it just a little bit more context and say, as a skilled DevOps engineer, you will produce complete and working Ansible code that is easy to read and understand. The code you write will be well organized, well optimized, and make use of Ansible modules and collections whenever possible. We scroll down a little more in the prompt and ask ChatGPT if he understands what we have asked so far. Before providing your response, you will explain your understanding of this request, then ask if what you explained is correct. If you are asked to make changes, you will do so, then provide again a full explanation of what is being requested, then ask again if what you explained is correct. Once I say, yes, please continue, then you can proceed with your answer and code output. This section, we outline our defined variables needed for the new VM as well as variables needed to connect to the VMware server. So the variable names that you see inside of the squiggly brackets, those are defined in the project variable sections down below. So this post-deployment section is where we have a set of commands that we want to run against a new VM once it's created. But as you know, at the beginning of our script, we don't have the IP address of this new VM yet. But as we run the script, that new VM's IP address is stored in a new VM_IP variable. So again, once the build is complete, Ansible will run these set of commands or tasks against that new VM. And so just for demo purposes, I'm just running, simple commands like hostname CTL. I'm echoing some content into the mode D, putting the current date and time into a var log build date file. I'm going to add a user called devuser01 and then finish up by just installing Apache onto the server. The remove VM section of this prompt is telling ChatGPT to create a section in Ansible playbook that will perform the task of removing the VM from VMware only when the remove_VM variable is set to true. So if the VM is on, then first power it off, then we'll wait 10 seconds before actually doing the removal of the VM. The final section of our prompt is the process flow section, and this is where we give ChatGPT an outline of how we would like things to go. So there are a couple different ways to request input from users when running a playbook, but we specifically are asking ChatGPT to use the vars prompt module to get the VM user password and to make sure that it's set to private so that the password is not shown on the screen. Next, we make sure that the build VM tasks are only ran if the remove VM variable is not set to true. We want to make sure that the IP assigned to the new VM is stored in our variables new VM_IP. Then we power on the VM once creation is complete. Perform post-deployment tasks we outlined, but only after access to port 22 of the new VM is accessible. Note that we're telling ChatGPT to connect to the new VM using an IP address that is stored in a new VM IP variable. Then we tell it to create our remove VM section within the script. Okay, let's copy and paste this prompt into ChatGPT and see what type of Ansible playbook it can create for us. So as you can see, we're running ChatGPT 4 instead of 3.5. And this is basically because I didn't like the results I was getting with 3.5. 4 seems to be more up to speed on what the Ansible scripting language is used for. So like I said, we're going to paste in to ChatGPT our prompt. Then we hit the submit, and he's pretty much going to regurgitate what we just submitted in. If you remember, in our prompt, we said that ChatGPT must prompt us to make sure that he has the understanding of what we're asking for before continuing on. And that's where this step is right now. So, the section here is understanding of the request. You want an Ansible playbook that, prompts the user for the VM password in a private manner, checks if the remove_VM variable is set to true, and if it is, power off the VM first if it is on, pause for 10 seconds, then remove the VM, and then basically end the playbook. Okay, so next, if remove VM is not set or it's set to false, create a VM with the given specifications, power it on, wait for port 22 to become available on the VM using the IP address that was assigned, and we'll wait up to 5 minutes, and then perform the post-deployment task on the VM. And like I said, it's prompting us, is this the correct understanding? If it is, we type in yes, and then he'll go in and start spitting out the Ansible playbook that he's creating for us. So as you can see, he's going through the task. There's a remove. Here's to create the VM. He's spitting it out pretty good. And then finally, he has the instructions on running the playbook. We pretty much did this in the setup phase, but it's close to what we had. So as we go back up, just to do a little bit of review of what the kind of code that he gave us. So for the vars, you can see that, our vCenter, we specified the name of our vCenter server, what name we want to give our VM, the VM user account that we use to log into VMware, what data center, the data store, the cluster, all this stuff here. Remove by default, or remove VM by default is false. And here is our prompt, our vars prompt that we were talking about, to where we wanted to ask for the VM password, but make it private so it doesn't display the password on the screen. The next section is the remove VM. If remove VM is set to true, this section here basically runs the Ansible Galaxy version of VMware to where it does the VMware guest power state module. Specifies the host name and the username and password again to log in, and basically is looking for the state to be powered off. And then we have our 10-second pause. Here's the remove section, to where if we did say remove VM equals true, it'll run this portion to where the VMware guest state would be absent. And then we move on to the create and manage the VM. And so this again, it logs into the VMware environment using our host name, username, and password. We have validate certificates to no, because we don't have valid certificates on our VMware farm at the moment. So here we got the name of the VM that we want to give. And so like I said, in squiggly brackets, it resolves this variable name to whatever we got set up above. And the state is present. And the template that we have already defined in our VMware environment is called RHEL 8 v2. Again, this is on the data store or data center. So again, the data center and the data store and clusters, these are all resolving to the variables that we have mentioned above, what network we want to be on. There's our memory requirements for this particular VM of 32 gigs, 4 CPUs. And here we have our disk layout that we want, or the disk size that we want, what data store it belongs on. Then we have the VMware guest power on section, and it's basically the state is powered on, pretty self-explanatory. But like I said, once it's powered on, we actually want to wait until SSH or port 22 becomes available, and we're going to wait up to about 5 minutes for that to happen. So Ansible script will pause, keep checking to see if port 22 is open before moving on. And so then we'll start doing our post-build scripts, our post-deployment scripts. And this is where we're running like the host name control command. We echo some verbiage into the mote-d. We echo the date and time into the var log build date file. And then we go on and add this temporary user or test user account called dev user 01. And then we follow up with installing Apache or HTTPD on the server. And being that we're doing Red Hat, I mean, it's probably going to do a Yum, but I guess if it was Debian, it would do the apt-get business. And then it follows up with the instructions, instructions needed to run the playbook. We pretty much did this in the setup phase of this demo, to where we install the PyVMommy, and I think I actually had request as well in there. But so he's pretty close in what's all that's needed. So what we'll do now is we'll copy and paste his results, put it into a YAML file, and we'll run this on the server side and see if it actually builds out the VM like we're hoping. All right, so I pasted the playbook that we got from ChatGPT into this YAML file called build_VM. So let's go ahead and go over to our shell prompt, and let's just run it and see what happens. All right, so I'm actually not logged in as root. I'm logged in as my JAB account. So we need to make sure that we pass in the right information. So what we're going to run here is Ansible playbook, and we want the SSH user to be root. We tell them to ask for that password. We're going to throw in a couple of V's here for verbosity, whichever you want to call it, and then our script. So let's see what happens here. Here's the SSH password for root, and this is the password for the VMware environment. Bombs out right away. So what we got here? Unsupported parameters for VMware guest model hardware disk. Hardware disk. Okay, so let's take a look at that. We come on down to the VMware guest section. Here, there's hardware disk. So I'm thinking that maybe this does not belong, or is it plural? Maybe this doesn't belong underneath hardware. But you know what? If you guys don't know about this, always look at the Ansible doc program. And it gives you a little bit more details into the parameters for each of these modules, and also shows a little bit of examples as well. So let's take a look at Ansible doc and see what it tells us. And that was for VMware guest. And we're looking for hardware disk or just a disk declaration itself. All right. We'll just scroll on down here. There's disk right here, and there's no S to it. Look like it's in an element by itself, because here's hardware. Okay, so disk plural is wrong, and it's not under hardware. Let's go down and take a look at a few other some examples. See what he got here. So there's our disk. All right, cool. Again, we're looking at examples within Ansible doc. There's hardware. All right. Looks pretty good. Not too bad examples. Let's check and see what else they got in here. I know we don't have all of the parameters set. Not that we need them. Oh, what's that? No, I don't recall seeing this either. So I think this is going to be important, because if you remember, we're saying we want them to wait until port 22 is made available before going on with our post-build steps. But if we don't wait for the IP address, then we're not going to know who to SSH into. Let's make sure we set that in our playbook. That might be just something else that I think ChatGPT might have missed. All right, so let's switch over back into our YAML file, make the changes for the disk definition, and add this wait for IP address as well. All right, so while I got that wait for IP address in my copy buffer, let's just go ahead and stick him in here in VMware guest. Space them over. All right, so this right here, I want to move over and take out the plural. All right, so we'll save that. Let's go back over to our shell, run it, and see if that works. All right, so let me put out Ansible doc, up arrow. So again, we're going to Ansible playbook. We want to run as SSH to the new VM as root. And here's asking for the SSH password for root. And we got 3 V's for verbosity. I have a hard time with that word. Verbosity. And then our build script. So we'll let it rip. Our SSH password. And then our VMware password. And let's see what it does. Okay, so right now it's cloning from our VMware image. Okay, it's done cloning. Now it's powering on. All right. Very good. Back over to Putty and see what's going on there. There we go. It's moving along. Yeah, and as we can see, you know, on the VMware side, it's up and running. It's got an IP address 192.168.52.16. So it's building it. Now it's doing the post-build stuff, and it's done. Very good, very good. So just to validate it, let's go ahead and SSH over to the server, just to make sure that we can get in. So we're going to SSH as root, and then the address was 192.168.50.216. Our password. We are in. Very cool. Very, very cool. So, you know, there was a few hiccups there with ChatGPT. Still got to know a little bit about what you're asking him to do so you can, you know, spot check him. He's not 100%, that's for sure. But it does give you, I'd say 80%, 90% of what you're looking for. To me, that's a bonus. All right. Thanks again for watching, guys. Please smash that like button and subscribe. Click on the notification bell if you want to be notified as soon as a new video is released.